All right. Hello, everybody. You are certainly in for a treat today. I am pleased to introduce you to Kristen Laramore of City Tampa, who's going to tell us a little bit more about her own journey with courage and connection, particularly as it relates to employee engagement and their community philanthropy. But before we get there, I want to certainly welcome Kristen to our scene, but I also want to invite her to share her own leadership journey to date. So, Kristen, welcome today.
Thank you very much, Liz. I appreciate it.
Great. So as you think about your leadership journey, I'd love to know what events and people and connections led you to where you are today.
Well, I love to tell the story about how I landed my dream job that I didn't know existed. There are two key underlying factors that really impacted my journey to my current role. The first one is networking. We hear that word all the time, but it was through a volunteer event in the year 2000 that connected me with a local professional in Texas. His name's Bob. Bob was first just a general networking contact and then organically became a mentor of mine. Fast forward 15 years, I made the decision to relocate to Tampa. I didn't know anybody in Tampa, but Bob, he did. He connected me with one of his professional networking contacts who happened to work at City Tampa. Introductions were made via email and a meeting was set up. I thought this was going to be just another call that wouldn't really bear fruit, but after the phone call, the city connection recommended me for the position I have today, all based on the endorsement of our mutual connection, Bob. The second factor is my resume. The experiences that grabbed the attention of the recruiter and the hiring manager were mostly what I call that fine print that you see in the resume. I had led events and managed projects through a previous employer, but it was really the inclusion of my interests and community involvement near the bottom of my resume that earned me that interview.
I love that. I love that you're saying, networking. I think so many times when we're in the rising leadership phase of our lives and our journeys, we forget that someone we can meet in 2000 can benefit 15 years from now. And one of the things I recommend to rising leaders is not just that networking piece, but also keeping track of folks, staying in touch, and even a little spreadsheet or a little contact list of different interests as you touch point. The world is a smaller and smaller place. But I
Indeed.
also like, your point about the fine print on your resume, right? We have a joke in the nonprofit business sector about everything falls under other duties as assigned. And that sounds to me very much like what you're saying, that it was those other duties as a sign that really landed you your dream job. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you also admitting that it's a dream job. I think a lot of folks see corporation or they see corporate philanthropy and they think, oh my goodness, how did that happen to you, Kristen? So I know part of that, though, is also part of your own journey with courage. So I'd love to hear your definition of courage and how you have leaned into that and leaned into connection because of it.
Great. Yeah. I've heard several variations of this quote, so forgive me if I don't properly accredit it, but there's a saying similar to, courage is not the absence of fear, it's the acting in spite of the fear. So when I took this role, frankly, it terrified me. Before City, the largest company I had ever worked for had 500 employees. And at the time City hired me, they had, in Tampa alone, had 5,000 employees, wow, and then 100,000 employees globally. So it was terrifying. I was scared to death, but I knew I could do this because I truly had a passion for the work that I was going to be assigned. And that really is all about the human connection. So those connections have really enabled me to purposefully align strategy with actions, be it through financial support, volunteerism, and community outreach, to diversity, equity, inclusion efforts. All of those bring value to our employees and, frankly, our brand here in Tampa.
Yeah, I love that phrase, strategy with action. I think that's a really important piece. I think so many of leaders act maybe without strategy or act without aligning with strategy, but that ability to take what you are wanting to do through the courage, but also through the community, and kind of do that strategy with action piece, I think is incredibly important. So I know you and I have had a lot of conversation offline about leaders and some of the struggles that have happened since 2020, particularly March of 2020. But why do you think leaders are still struggling with bringing teams together? I mean, at the time that we're recording, it's May 2022. So we're, 2-ish years later. So why do you think that struggle is still there and that struggle is still real as we think about bringing teams together?
Well, I'm going to use the term obviously. Maybe it's not obvious to a lot of people, but our work environment has physically changed. When the pandemic forced everybody home, all of a sudden we realized that what used to work in the past to bring us together looks different. And it's probably never going to look the same again. We can try to go back to our previous normals, but even those have changed. So we're all constantly adapting. A lot of people like to work in that virtual environment or a hybrid where they're a little bit at home, sometimes at the office. That's what City's implementing right now, is a hybrid approach. And but City still values that human connection, and they know that bringing people physically together is still a way to just make your teams more fruitful, closer together, and just happier overall. We had to pivot. For example, in my job, I was no longer doing these massive in-person events because of COVID. We could not bring people together in masses. So we had to creatively think, how can I social distance and still bring people together? It just seems like polar opposites of what you're doing. But we brainstormed and we came up with some really fun ideas. Some of the things that we implemented were a laser light show. So we pulled together a laser light show where people drove up to the city property and watched a laser show from their cars with their family. So they were still isolating with their own family members, but they could tune into the radio and listen to the music and watch the lights. Everybody had a great time. We, as people approached the event, we would give them a little city goodie bag with our masks on and just welcome them to the event. Another event that we did, we hosted a drive-through pirate invasion. So here in Tampa, we're all about pirates. And so we rented some big pirate ship floats and placed them along the road that circles our property. And we had pirate actors come and attack the cars as they came in. And there were several stops where volunteers would give them cute little swags that were all pirate themed. And everyone had a really, really good time. And one of the most engaging events that we did was an at-home painting event. So we had people sign up. They stopped by a drive-through event to pick up their painting kit. They took it home, and then they all logged in at the same time to watch an instructor teach you how to paint your masterpiece, which happened to be a Florida sunset. So we had our employees. It didn't just stop there. At the end of the event, we asked everybody to send your photos in of your masterpieces, and we shared them. We got so much buzz and comments on our intranet site. It was amazing. I mean, people are asking, when can we do another painting event? We've even hosted a online cooking show. It's like your own personal master's class as well. So we've done some really creative ideas, and we are looking forward to getting back to some in-person things, but we're still trying to be mindful of that. Some of our colleagues are still in a hybrid situation, or maybe a permanently work from home. So we do still have to take those into account as well.
I mean, I got to say, the Pirate Festival sounds amazing. As a mom of young kids and a pirate connoisseur myself, I will say that sounds like a lot of fun. But the idea, as you said, is, 3 events that you just shared that literally have very little to do with City's business. Exactly. And I think that's kind of the irony, right? As those who are listening are saying, well, what does City do again? They made Googled you again. But to be an organization, a bank, a financial services organization that really works on that, and then to take that time to really focus on the tangible things that you could do with your team. And that leads me to my second to last question, which is, what are some of those tangible things that we can do as leaders to impact our connection and our culture? I mean, you talked about some of us are in hybrid, some of us are permanently moved into a telecommuting environment. What can we continue to do to create those connections?
City employees, they're people to be engaged, and you wonder, what does that really mean? It could be physically being at the site or joining a virtual professional development event. We have diversity cultural events that go on virtually and at the site. We also have employee appreciation events like the events I just mentioned earlier. We want to let our employees know they are valued as a company. And so those are some of the things that we do as a site. But, as a leader, sometimes just physically being there, whether you're at an event, you're on that call, maybe they can show interest, ask questions about what's important to their employees' teams, to their teams. And even if, more importantly, if possible, implement some of those suggestions, listen to their teams, make them feel valued, give them a sense of ownership and pride, and really importantly, a safe space to share. So I really feel like some of those things have been done very well at City. I'm sure there's a lot of managers that are still working through a lot of these bumps and bruises, but overall, that seems to be the message, is just being present as a leader is extremely valuable.
Well, and that's one of those skill sets that, people talk about, what can you teach? What can't you? That almost seems so basic. If we just need you to be present and actively listen. And then, as you said, implement some of those things that can be implemented. I know sometimes when we brainstorm as employees, we have these great ideas that might be out of the realm of possibilities. But I love that idea of presence. And as you said, actively listening. And particularly when you're in that C-suite level or above, taking the time to really, get down with folks and really kind of come off the perceptive piece, to really just hear what people are struggling with and what they're celebrating as well.
True.
Very good. Well, so as you continue your work at City Tampa and think about your connection work, really your other duties as assigned, what's on the horizon for City Tampa and for the work that you have in the community?
Well, we continue to grow. In spite of our hybrid work set, we are actively hiring. We're at 9,400 employees right now at our site. People don't even know we're here because we don't have a retail presence, but we do have a lot of people that work at City Tampa. But for me personally, professionally, it is a balance of sustainability to continue my philanthropic DEI and employee engagement work set, but I'm also looking for opportunities that might enrich those experiences and those impacts as we move forward. There's a saying at City that the C stands for change, and we are always changing and adapting. And so what maybe used to be the way we did something, they're not afraid to pivot, change, adjust, and just kind of see what works best for the employees as a whole. So I'm really thrilled that I get to work for a company that truly cares for its employees and shows it in a multitude of ways, be it professionally, giving you a good place to work, the equipment that you need, or just getting out there and getting enriched, involved in your community. It's really important that I work for a company like that, and City does it.
That's great. And I love that you said the C stands for change. I mean, I think a lot of the businesses that we work with at Connect for More in the nonprofit space, sees change is a dirty word, right? It's like, oh, we just can't keep changing. But I think if nothing else, the last 2 years or so has shown us our sustainability of being resilient, as you talk about, being making room for change, but also making room for positive change and not just change for change's sake. So for any of our folks that are participating and viewing this today, how can we best support your work at City? I mean, what can we do to support the great work that you're doing as a corporation out in our community, and, caring about your employees, caring about your community and philanthropy, and continuing that courage work of the diversity, equity, inclusion piece as well?
All right, this is where you're going to have to cut. This is
So as we were talking about what's on the horizon for your courage and connection work, I asked the question of, what can we do to support you? And I would love, Kristen, to hear a little bit more about how we as community members can support the work that you and City are doing in our community.
I think one of the best things that anybody could do is just be aware that we're here. We are in our community. Like I mentioned earlier, we don't have a retail presence. So a lot of people are not even aware that City's here, that we want them to hopefully be appreciative. They'll see our brand, and they know when you see our brand, it's usually because we're out in our communities. We want to show the value add that connecting with our community is truly important, and it is a very high priority of City. They want to make sure that we're not just employing people, but we're also enabling our communities. We have a strategy of kind of caring for our community from birth till retirement. So we look for opportunities to care for the person as a whole throughout their lifetime. So if there's some opportunities that Connect for More sees that maybe there's a gap, maybe there's a piece of stage in someone's lifetime that maybe needs a little love, bring that to us, and we're happy to take a look at it. So like I said, we're all about the human connection, whether it's our employees or our community.
Love that. I appreciate as well that idea of person as the whole. I know we at Connect for More talk a lot about holistic leadership and showing up as a whole person, not having one version of ourselves, that there's not just a work Liz or a mom Liz and a fun Liz, as some of my friends get to see, but then there's an opportunity to serve the whole. Kristen, I just want to say thank you for showing up and sharing your story with City. I think there is a misnomer that many of the corporations in our community and beyond, are all about the bottom line. And so I continue to always appreciate the opportunity to hear from you and what you all are doing at City to take care of those 9,400 individuals behind the brand locally, and just really appreciate your perspective. So thanks so much for sharing that with us today.
You're welcome.